Hi, I'm Jack. See those kids? That skinny guy over there is me, and that's Chuck. He's a bully and a tough guy. We were classmates. I was a nerd and a teacher's pet. Chuck was a bully and constantly got punished. One day, I ran into him and his friends near school. They cornered me because I'd done well in math class. You think you're so smart? We'll teach you a lesson. Chuck came closer and I took off running. He'd almost caught up to me when a girl suddenly appeared next to him. I had seen her at school. She was the same age as us. The girl grabbed my arm and started dragging me along. We turned into an alley and hid in a building. We found ourselves in an office. My mom works here, so we won't get kicked out. I'm Carrie, by the way. Jack, thanks for the help. No problem. Chuck bullies me too, but he is afraid because my dad is the principal. From that day on, we became friends. Carrie was no less nerdy than me. We were lab partners, did science projects, and read books together. Meanwhile, Chuck's gang was getting stronger. They tried to bother us while the principal wasn't looking. One day, we got tired of it and decided to fight back. Carrie had just got a book describing fun experiments as a gift. We found all the ingredients for one of them and made an effervescent mixture. Carrie came up to Chuck near school entrance. Hey, Chuck, I bet you won't catch me. Chuck and his friends rushed after her. I was hiding around the corner. When they got close, I opened the bottle with the mixture and pointed it at them. A stream of soap suds spilled over those fools. Chuck slipped and almost fell. The others rubbed their eyes and started spitting the suds out. That was awesome. That's what you get for messing with us. Of course, after that, Chuck wanted to get back at us, but he couldn't think of anything clever to do and just went on bothering us. The principal noticed it, and their gang was punished. One day, Carrie and I saw a couple kissing on the street. Ugh, it's so disgusting. I think it's cool. When we grow up, we'll start dating someone too. Dating whom? You'll find a girlfriend, and I'll find a boy I like. Hey, let's make a deal. If we don't fall in love with anyone before we hit 17, we'll just date each other. We shook hands and swore a solemn oath. Of course, it was just a children's joke, but no one expected what happened next. We grew up and went to high school. Look, see that ripped guy over there? Cool, right? That's Chuck. The jerk looked gorgeous, and girls followed him everywhere. And that little guy at the end of the hallway is me. Meanwhile, Carrie really had changed and become a real beauty. I don't know when I first noticed it. I just looked at her one day and realized she was a pretty girl. I hid my feelings because I didn't want to ruin our friendship. One day, we were told that there was going to be a Valentine's Day celebration at school. Several students dressed up in funny Cupid costumes and delivered Valentines. The love notes could be sent anonymously. Carrie and I used to make fun of such nonsense and never take part in it. But that time, something was different. During a break, I saw Carrie sitting on a windowsill and writing something enthusiastically. When I approached her, she covered whatever she was writing with a textbook. Are you hiding something? Carrie looked embarrassed for some reason. It's nothing important. I'm just getting ready for class. I was wary. She was definitely hiding something, even though we used to tell each other everything. After classes, I was waiting for Carrie on the school porch as usual when I saw her in a window. She was talking to a guy dressed as Cupid. I took a look closer and could not believe my eyes. Carrie was giving him a Valentine! Damn it! Had she really fallen in love with someone? When Carrie came out of school, I hid around the corner. She waited for me a while and then left. I quickly came back to school and found the winged postman. I need the Valentine card that girl just gave you. That's against the rules. The Valentines are supposed to be anonymous. I wanted to grab and scare him a bit, but alas, I wasn't Chuck. I could only maybe scare a fly. I tossed and turned all night and couldn't fall asleep. When had Carrie fallen in love? The next day, we went to school together. Carrie looked thoughtful and didn't even ask why I had left without her the day before. Chuck's gang was hanging out by the school. He was boasting that he had got a whole pile of Valentines. A bunch of girls hung around him all day long. The lovesick fools hung on his every word. I wanted to laugh at him with Carrie, but then I noticed something weird. She looked at him the same way those girls did. Memories immediately flashed through my mind. Carrie sitting on the windowsill and writing something, passing a Valentine to Cupid. No, it couldn't be. Had she fallen in love with that jerk Chuck? After school, I asked her over and tried to delicately find out the truth. Look, don't take it the wrong way. It just seems to me you, sent a Valentine to Chuck. I expected Carrie to laugh and call me a fool, but she blushed and looked away. You know, I don't think he's that bad. I was shocked. Are we talking about the same Chuck? Carrie sighed. Love is such an uncontrollable feeling. You will understand when you find someone you like. I knew perfectly well what love felt like, but of course, I didn't say anything. It didn't end there. Carrie was obsessed with Chuck. She tried to run into him in hallways and join the soccer club he went to. But the worst thing was that she kept sending him anonymous notes with confessions. Chuck bullied her more than anyone else, but she didn't seem to notice it. Carrie asked me for advice one day. Do you think I should confess my feelings to him? Are you crazy? It's Chuck! He'll make fun of you! I kept trying to convince her not to do it all day. In the end, Carrie said I was right and I calmed down. But as it turned out, I shouldn't have. After school, she told me not to wait for her. I have some extra French classes. That seemed weird to me. Carrie had no problems in French and never had to stay after classes before. I had a bad feeling and decided to get to the bottom of it. I pretended to leave and then come back to school. I headed to the French language classroom and cautiously peeked inside. Chuck was sitting next to Carrie. He'd probably got a detention, and Carrie seized the chance to spend more time with him. The teacher suddenly got up from his seat and went out. I barely had time to jump away and hide around the corner. Then I went back to the classroom and saw that Carrie had taken out a note. She was about to hand it to Chuck. What a fool! The whole school would laugh at her! I could not let that happen and abruptly walked in. Chuck stared at me in surprise. Carrie froze with an outstretched hand. I sat down next to her, and that was when the teacher came back. Jack, what are you doing here? I wanted to ask something before tomorrow's test. So I had to listen to an explanation of a topic I already knew. When we left the classroom, Carrie suddenly called Chuck's name and handed him the note. I tried to stop her, but didn't have time. I froze in place and silently watched Chuck unfold it. No, wait. Read it at home, please. Ha ha! Did she seriously think he would listen? But to my surprise, Chuck nodded and put the note in his pocket. The next day, I was ready to stand up for Carrie if Chuck made fun of her. He must have told the whole school about her confession. I was walking down the hallway and could hear everyone discussing them. The girls were whispering, and even the guys looked surprised. Of course, the daughter of the principal had fallen in love with the biggest bully in school. Before classes, Carrie liked to drink coffee in the school cafeteria. I imagined her sitting there alone and crying. I immediately rushed to the cafeteria to comfort her, but it turned out I was completely wrong. Carrie really was in the cafeteria, except she wasn't sitting alone at the table. Chuck was with her. They were holding hands and looking at each other with loving eyes. That was why everyone was talking about them. Chuck liked her back. How was it possible? I couldn't believe it! All of a sudden, Carrie noticed and waved at me, inviting me to join them. Yeah, right. I turned around and left. Carrie came to our classroom during the next break. I thought she was looking for Chuck again, but she wanted to talk to me. We went out into the hallway and Carrie told me how happy she was. Chuck had told her he also liked her for a long time. He had been afraid to admit it and made fun of her so that she wouldn't suspect anything. Why are you so upset? You should be happy for me. I had to force a smile on my face and pretend that everything was fine, while in fact, I was feeling really down. I'd never forgotten about our agreement. We were about to turn 17. I had been hoping Carrie wouldn't meet anyone until then, and we'd start dating. But then all that happened. I couldn't tell her about my feelings. I didn't have the courage. I was too shy and afraid of ruining our friendship. Moreover, she loved Chuck. He started giving her gifts, walking her home, and constantly holding her hand. Everyone was shocked that Chuck was capable of acting like that. The other girls were terribly jealous of Carrie. But one day, the fairy tale came to an end. The principal heard rumors of his daughter's relationship with the bully. He was furious. I was passing by his office and accidentally overheard their conversation. You aren't allowed to talk to him. Got it? A few seconds later, Carrie ran into the hallway in tears. She didn't even notice me and rushed past me. I caught her and tried to calm her down. Dad grounded me. He said if I kept dating Chuck, he would expel him from school. I pretended to feel sorry for her, even though I was actually very happy. Maybe if Carrie didn't see Chuck often, her feelings would go away. Then she suddenly asked me for a favor. Jack, you have to help me date Chuck in secret. I had no words. I wanted to refuse, but it would have seemed strange. Carrie could have started to suspect something, so I had to agree. From that day on, madness took over my life. One evening, I came to Carrie's house to study. At least, that is what we told her parents. As long as Carrie was with me, her dad wasn't worried. We locked the room and Carrie escaped through the window to go on a date with Chuck. Everything was going well, and her parents hadn't come home to check on her. but the idea that Carrie was with that idiot was bothering me. I waited a bit and followed them. The couple was sitting in a park not far from Carrie's house. "Carrie, we need to get back. Your father has knocked on the door several times already." Carrie was upset that her date had been cut short, but still went home. The next day, she decided to meet Chuck in the schoolyard. The principal was constantly watching her, and Carrie asked me to distract him. I spoke to him in the hallway, and Carrie slipped by unnoticed. I decided to ruin that date too. "You know, I saw some hooligans drawing graffiti on the wall in the schoolyard. They wrote something nasty. It should probably be washed off." The principal immediately rushed into the schoolyard. I was hoping he'd catch Chuck and Carrie, but they managed to hide. At least they couldn't spend any more time together. I was very pleased with myself. Carrie didn't give up and came up with new ways to run away on dates. I acted like I was helping, but set them up time after time. One day, Carrie asked me to help them go on a date after school. "Tell Dad that you and I are going to the cinema. They are showing some sort of science film now." I lied to the principal, and he bought it. I wished he hadn't, but then I got an idea. After Carrie had left, I praised the science film so much that her dad decided to watch it too. He came to the cinema and caught Carrie and Chuck there. I was sitting nearby and saw everything. He caused a huge scene. Chuck wasn't expelled, but he was made to go to school in summer. The holidays had just begun, and the principal wanted him to always be supervised. I was hoping that that would make Carrie give up, but her determination to date Chuck only grew. One day, she asked me for help again. We made our way to school. Chuck was studying in the classroom on the first floor. The windows were high up, and I hoisted Carrie up so she could talk to him. It was a complete nightmare. Carrie was sitting on my shoulders and kissing Chuck! Can you imagine that? I wanted the principal to see them, but he was having lunch in the cafeteria at that time. One day, I went to Carrie's house. She greeted me very joyfully. "Just imagine, Dad said that Chuck's grades are improving. He is studying harder and no longer bullying anyone. If this goes on, Dad will let us date." Damn it! If that happened, I would definitely have no chance with Carrie. I decided it was time for desperate measures. You definitely won't approve of what I did. There was a girl called Sarah studying at the summer school with Chuck. She was very beautiful, but stupid. I asked her to put on a show and promised to do her homework in return. When everything was ready, I gave Chuck a note signed with Carrie's name. It was a request to come to the physics classroom. At the same time, I met Carrie there myself. "I don't know how to say it, but Chuck has been lying to you. Do you remember that beautiful girl, Sarah? He's dating her in secret." Carrie didn't believe me, so I brought her to the classroom. When we walked in, Sarah threw her arms around Chuck's neck and kissed him. He didn't have time to react and push her away. Carrie burst into tears and ran away. My plan had worked. She spent the whole evening crying in her room. Her parents and I comforted her. I also thought that Chuck was changing for the better. "I won't let him even come close to you again." I didn't leave Carrie's side for the next few days. Chuck called her all the time, but she didn't want to talk to him. It seemed like a good moment, and one day I told Carrie about my feelings. "I've been in love with you for a long time. I was afraid of ruining our friendship, so I didn't say anything. Do you remember our agreement? I'll be 17 soon. Let's go out." Carrie looked at me in shock. She was silent for several long seconds, and then agreed. I couldn't believe my luck. At first, everything was going fine. We spent a lot of time together. I prepared various surprises for Carrie and tried to make her laugh. But she was sad all the time. At some point, I suddenly realized that I missed the way things used to be. The times where we could easily have fun together and had inside jokes. I felt like a complete idiot. I got what I wanted, only to realize that I only loved Carrie as a friend. But how could I tell her about it now? And one day, new neighbors moved into the house next to ours. There was a girl among them. I saw her and instantly fell in love. Only at that moment did I understand what Carrie had been talking about. Love really was an uncontrollable feeling. I suffered more and more by the day. I couldn't approach the girl I had fallen in love with because I was dating my friend. Something had to change. One day, I plucked up the courage and told Carrie the truth about causing trouble for her and Chuck on purpose, setting him and Sarah up and now regretting it all. I love you as a friend. I'm sorry for everything. Of course, Carrie was terribly angry and said that she didn't want to see me anymore. I decided to fix everything. I went to her father and told him the truth as well. I said that Chuck was not to blame for anything. He got angry but quickly calmed down. Everyone makes mistakes. What's important is knowing how to admit them. The next day, I booked a table in a cafe and ordered a romantic dinner there. I sent Carrie a message and asked her to come there at a certain time. I said that I wanted to apologize and she wouldn't regret it if she came. Then, I found out Chuck's address from the principal and went to his place. We talked and I convinced him to come to the cafe. That's where he met Carrie. I left as so not to stand in their way. She called me back in the evening. Carrie sounded like she was smiling. They had made up and finally gone on a normal date. Jack, you're such a fool, but it's okay. I forgive you. My mood immediately improved. I saw my neighbor come out of the house. I went outside as well. Hi, I've been wanting to say for a long time that I really like you. Do you want to go on a date? Do you think I can get her to notice me? Write in the comments down below.
Hey squad, like to see your life in comics? Stories that are so embarrassing that even friends do not know about them. Don't say you don't have such ones. They belong on the Anon Please channel. Check it out. Click here.